Here we are now with assets. We will now start to show you. This is an example of how it are going to be estimated. So as yearly, as we already have an initial of 1,000 but expected that we will going to invest starting from the 30,000 pesos. Let's just have this amount of 30,000 including the income that we earned because we still have accounts receivable, notes receivable, and the rest of the equipment owned by the business as well the inventory. So let's just have this for the whole year of 2024, which is 12 months. You have this cash available on hand, which is 30,000, and estimated that the next year you still have the same amount, or by the way, it requires to increase not too far, but if it can be far, why not? But if it is very far that it can be possible, obviously we should have to be realistic with the estimation that it can be not so far, not impossible to reach. So 32,000 and then 35,000, a minimal increase of the cash possible available cash in the business. And then of course accounts receivable. In the first year, you can have at least 5,000 for collectible amounts from the customer. So meaning you allow the customer to borrow, but total of all the customers that you have in your business can be up to 5,000, but make sure that you make credit check, customer credit checks, meaning you check the customer's ability to pay, and of course, character based in the community, the good payer and the not good payer, that we're going to allow you to trust them that despite of the accounts receivable or not for informal borrowing or acquiring of the product with no signature allowed or no required signature for them to acquire the product, you trust them that they were going to settle that specific account receivable. By the way, it is happening that sometimes customers are really hard to pay for that specific AR or account receivable. Sometimes account receivables being called as AR, A/R, to minimize the, just to shorten it. Because if you have a very high number in accounts receivable and it turns out to be bad debts, it is being called as bad debts if the customer is impossible to pay for it, or it is impossible for you to collect the amount of money you allow them to borrow, or you allow them to get the product with no payment or on credit. It is being called as bad debts, but hoping that you will not have that as a micro business. That's why I did not include that in this part. A bad debt is an expense and it is part of the income statement. But am not encouraging you to have bad debts, so do not have a very high number of accounts receivable and choose very well the people you allow to borrow money or acquire the product on account. So another one, you will notice that it is consistent. You can do that for the preceding years, that you will have the same amount of allowable amount of product that you can allow the customer to get on account or acquire. The next to it is the notes receivable. You will be able to see that amounts of notes receivable is consistent, as I also indicated the same estimated amount. By the way, you will be able to collect that still, but for security purposes of your cash, of course, if you cannot collect that on time, you in notes payable, you ask the customer to sign a promise or to write a promise with their signature affixed to it, that they are knowledgeable or accepting that they have an amount of money or amount of product that is on account and responsible to pay that amount to you with a specific date and percentage, that if in case they cannot pay it for 1 month, you will going to put an increase of percent or 1% or 2%, depends on you, as an interest receivable. So interest receivable is another one, or interest gain, but I did not put it there. But if you can minimize, because it is not advisable for a micro business to have a high number of possible receivables, because if you will have so many receivables, and it's really not it is common that sometimes it is happening that it is really hard to collect. So for the possibility, if you can just make it cash, why not? If they can pay for cash, that's better, rather than allowing them to put them on account, put the acquiring of your product on account. Then of course, the prepaid supplies. This is the supplies that you have already paid and available for you to use in the business operations. And in this part, we combine them all. As I mentioned to you a while ago, we just have an estimation of 2,000 pesos including the next years, because whatever you have in your supplies this year can be used still in the next years. You can pay, you can purchase for another additional supplies, but maybe it's minimal because it's a manufacturing business. But in an inventory, I have an estimated inventory of 3,000 because majority turned out into cash. So I still have enough cash to buy for inventory if needed. Then prepaid rent, if I am renting a space, the minimum amount as I scan the environment here in Rojas is 3,000 pesos. But if you do not have that, you can just remove from the list minimum, because we try to minimize the possible expenses. And then the equipment, this is composition of 4,500 worth of oven, and then 1,500 um, for the amount of blender or mixer. This is from real base that I can check via online as based on what I have already purchased before. And then accumulated depreciation, how to get this amount. As I mentioned to you a while ago, 6,000 pesos divided by 5 years. So that is the allowable accumulated depreciation for equipment, as I purchased it for 6,000. But for your information as well, that as part of the rules in accounting, the amount should be recorded from the time that it was acquired. It will going to be recorded 6,000 in the first year until the upcoming years because of ongoing concern, meaning the as you use the equipment throughout the years, it will still going to reflect with the same amount, part of the ongoing concern. But this depreciation, accumulated depreciation, pertains to the length of the service, which is allowing you to, at least if in case the efficiency or quality of the performance of the equipment, can be for maintenance, can be for not repurchasing, but at the same time to make a way that it will still going to serve with its quality and performance efficiency. Then that's all for the assets. So you sum up all of them, and you got the total assets of 65,200 pesos. So now you will notice that the next year it increased a little, and then at least a considerable amount in the third year, which is 70,200. Then now let's go on with liabilities. So liabilities, as I mentioned to you, so accounts payable, maybe you owe money from any person or suppliers that allows you to have this of 27,300 pesos. Given that with an amount from the assets gives an idea to the bank or any financing company of your ability to pay the liabilities. Means if it is balanced, you still have an ability to pay those liabilities. So this is an example of liabilities. Accounts payable 27,300. The next year is 31,800. The next year is 40,000 pesos. And then another one is the notes payable. You borrow an amount of money from the bank So with an agreement that you're going to pay it monthly or installment, but this as a total of 15,000 pesos in the first year, and then 12,300 the second year, and 6,800 the third year. You will notice that it is decreasing from the first year going on to the next, because if it is 3 years to pay, automatically it will going to lessen as the years goes by. If it is 5 years to pay, I'm sorry. So you will notice as well the salaried employee is consistent, because it is very rare that in a business that the salary of employee increase. Specifically, it depends to the net income of the business. And by the way, I forgot to mention to you that there is now another update that the business is allowed to pay a lower for minimum salary, depends on the capacity of the micro business to pay for salaries of its employee. So you can do your scheme of salaries depends to the ability of your business in terms of its earnings. Hindi na siya katulad ng may minimum na 250 or 395 per day. So you will depends the salary of your employee, as long as you can find an employee who will accept the amount of money that you are willing to pay based on your ability to pay for their salary. Okay, so then of course utilities estimated that it's 3,000. Even though this is somehow flexible, but for illustration purposes, this can increase. This can also be maintained. Depends to the control, specifically with water consume of the business, or electricity consumes of the operations. Then this one can be consistent, but obviously this one's supposed not to be consistent. But for micro business as a bracket, if it is earning just a minimum, it automatically they automatically provide a minimum computation. So just have an estimated minimum computation of 5,000 for the whole year of the micro business earnings. Then, of course, the total of them, you sum up the liabilities and get the total. Then after that, you will go on computation of your equity. Equity is your capital. So, as declared, is you start each operations each day or each month with 3,000, whatever is the remaining in the capital amount, and then the possible allowable owner's drawings. If you can minimize that, that's better. If you do not like to have, but it's impossible because it can happen sometimes that you can get from the business operations at least 100 pesos, which is called as owner's drawings. Then you sum up them. By the way, the owner's drawings or the withdrawal of money from the business for personal use being deducted from the capital. So it's 2,900. In this part is 3,100 pesos, and then 3,400 pesos. Then you now sum up the total liabilities and the total equity to be able to get the total liabilities and equity. And then same goes with the next upcoming years. Now you compare them, the two of them, you will notice that the amount of the assets, the total assets and the total liabilities in orange are close to each other, are exactly the same, because that's the reason why it is called as sheets. Balance sheet. Now, do you still have a question with this? If you have question, you just punch on our GC. But I suggest that before you ask question, make sure that it was not explained in the video. That's all. Thank you.